I was the one who took these pictures. I commanded a squadron in the air test group that was on the Randolph 1954-55. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the pictures that you're about to see. It's taken from the officer's motorboat. This is the one that we used to go ashore in on Liberty from the ship. And I took shots of the ship going away to give you some idea how it looked going away from it. And the next shot, this one is taken from an aircraft, an AD-5, flying low over the water toward the ship to give you an idea how the ship looks as you're flying toward it. The shaking around is the bumpy air that we experienced with the aircraft. Now this is a picture of the ship, how it looks when you are making a carrier approach to a landing. Here we're abeam of the ship and we start our turn toward the ship. And the aircraft remains in a constant turn coming toward the ship. You notice it's in the same relative position at all times. The ship is going away from you, so the relative speed is reduced somewhat. Your landing speed is reduced somewhat, although it's still quite high. Aircraft nowadays touch down about 140 knots. With this aircraft, the touchdown speed was something about 90. And here we are approaching right on the deck. You can see the LSO and the aircraft lands, and the camera fell out of the hand of the photographer. Here are some of the people that made the air group up. That's Mike Hanley, the air group commander. Behind him on his aircraft are all of the insignias around the star of the various squadrons that were in the air group. He's talking with his plane captain there. The plane number traditionally is always 00. You can barely see that behind Mike's head. And in a second you'll meet the rest of the people who were there. Frank O'Brien commanded a Banshee squadron, and there's his name on the airplane. And he's talking with his plane captain. Correction, that wasn't a Banshee, that was correction, that is a Banshee, that's a Banshee. Gil Acker commanded the Cougar squadron. That's the F-9F with the swept wing. It's no longer in service. As a matter of fact, none of the aircraft that you see in this 1954-55 cruise are in service. Carl Dallin was in charge of the photo unit. There were photo reconnaissance aircraft, specially equipped to do reconnaissance over in Europe. And Buddy Yates lucked into his squadron because his commanding officer was hurt. He became commander of a large Banshee squadron that flew at night with us. Here we have the commanding officer of the 80 squadron on the left, and the oh, there's me climbing up on the airplane, by golly. Look at this slim body and a good-looking fella. They were both looking at the 85 here. This was a specially equipped night attack aircraft that had all special kind of electronic equipment in it and had night capability for delivering nuclear weapons. That's not me getting down. That's a fat guy. I'm the skinny guy behind him. I'm a little better looking now, but I'm a little older. And there's all the guys, minus me, because I was taking the picture. They commanded the squadrons that were part of the air group. And having nothing else to do, they go into a little antic here, which is the monkeys see no evil, hear no evil, which I'm sure you've seen before. Some guy didn't smell any evil there, too. That's Gil Acker. Now we're going to see how it works. When flight quarters are sounded, a lot of things happen on an aircraft carrier. Everybody springs into action. They go to their stations for flight quarters, and this is preparation for launching aircraft. Aircraft are spotted on the deck. In the days of the Randolph, the aircraft that were not jets were deck launched, except when they were heavily loaded. And later you'll see aircraft being deck launched, and in some cases catapulted. Here aircraft come up the elevator from down below, or downstairs as the civilians say. In the Navy it's below and above, topside. So that one came from below to topside. It's being pulled not by a tractor but by a mule. The mule will take it into its deck spot. All of the aircraft are put out schematically with little model plates in flight deck control so that everybody knows where each aircraft goes to. And this is why there's no chaos on board when they're spotting the aircraft. Because if you need to know where a particular aircraft goes, if you don't know already, you're going to flight deck control, see where the little airplane with the number on it looking for is, and you put it there. So that's what these guys are doing. They're moving aircraft around, getting ready for the launch, positioning them so that they go off in the order they're supposed to go, and with the maximum amount of efficiency. So all of this spotting the deck takes probably about 20 minutes. This aircraft is being positioned on the catapult. That is an F-9F Cougar. It will be catapulted. This one is being moved up on the catapult, or shortly behind the catapult. The other aircraft will follow in suit. The way that the launch goes is the planes that are catapulted go off first, and then the props that are being deck launched go off after. This aircraft is being fueled. The guys with the red shirts belong to the fuel gang. They do the fueling. The ones in the green shirts have to do with ordnance. The brown shirts with maintenance. The yellow shirts are the plane directors. They are the bosses on the flight deck. So when you see yellow shirts, this is the only person who can authorize the movement of an aircraft. White shirt is medical. The yellow shirt is also worn by the landing signal officer, known as the LSO, and by the air boss, who is the air officer, which job I held later on the Intrepid. At this particular time, I was not the air boss. I was part of the air group. That is a Cougar being moved in position by a mule. We should have some music playing in the background here, like the Stars and Stripes Forever or America the Beautiful. But we'll get a little more professional as we do this more often. There you can see the folded wings are being spread in preparation for launch. All aircraft that are on carriers must have foldable wings to make the maximum use of space. So you see all these aircraft have their wings folded, except when they're launched. If they're launched with the wings folded, they are very difficult to fly. You fly much better with the wings spread. They are lowered and raised hydraulically. During World War II, there were a few that were actually pushed back manually. The fighter F-6F Hellcat had a manual arrangement. This signal is passed by the loudspeaker or the 1MC on the ship. That's Kirkley. He's one of my guys. Pilots man your planes, so they get up off their duff out of the ready room and they hustle up to the flight deck and make everything ready for the launch. At this point, the pilots check out the airplanes themselves, check the fuel, check the ammo loading. That's Harry Snyder. He is no longer with us. Harry died about 2 years ago. I saw in the retired officer's manual. There's my airplane, 801. That nacelle that you can see there, which looks like a fuel tank, is actually an electronics countermeasure unit. That jams the enemy's radar, that unit. It also can dispense chaff, which is silver foil, which helps jam the radar. This particular Cougar is being manned by an unknown pilot. I don't recognize him right now. Now, this was the old signal. When the red flag was hanging out of the tower there, that meant you cannot launch aircraft. The signal to start engines is passed by the 1MC, by the air officer, and all engines start simultaneously. You just don't start them when you feel like it. You start when the word is given. Obviously, any aircraft that doesn't start doesn't fly. That makes sense, doesn't it? And we can see a few lazy ones there that are not anxious to start. Here we're getting ready to launch aircraft, and when that happens, the flag will change from red to white. This Fox flag, this is the international signal, will actually be run up to the top position, or two blocked, as they say in the Navy, saying I am launching aircraft. The white flag will be switched right there where you can see the red flag flying. It should happen before the aircraft is launched. And we didn't get to see that. There's the white flag now, and there's the aircraft going off. That was the first jet that happened. There's the Fox flag going up to the top, being two blocked. Foxtrot in the international phonetic language. When you see a ship flying the Foxtrot flag, that means he is launching aircraft. There's the white flag. Rotten looking, isn't it? Nowadays on carriers they use red lights and white lights and green lights. Green light is launching aircraft today. There the aircraft are being moved up on the catapult. And these days, launching wasn't as swift as it is today. Today on a 4-catapult carrier they can launch one aircraft every 8 seconds. Intrepid, who you'll see later on, was doing one every 16. We only had 2 catapults on the Intrepid. The Randolph here, which had a wooden deck, 2 catapults, both of which were hydraulic, just not as swift. There goes the Banshee off. And the other Banshees move into position on the catapult to take their turn at being launched. The reason for the 2 different colors on the same model airplane are the 2 different squadrons. Oddly enough, the light-colored one was the night and all-weather aircraft. The dark one was the fair-weather jet. In today's, there's Frank. In today's Navy, all aircraft are all-weather and night qualified. But in 1954-55, there were specialty units that were night all-weather qualified. Here we have the Cougars getting ready. That was a very, very capable and maneuverable aircraft. It's made by Grumman. It was also used by the Blue Angels at one time. And there goes the last Banshee, and we have Cougars moving into position. Oh, there's another Banshee. Another Banshee being moved by a yellow shirt. You see this fellow in the yellow shirt? He's a plane director. There's another plane director, yellow shirt. Oh, the only people who can move aircraft around. And here's an AD preparing for a deck launch. Here the engine is wound up to its full capacity, full RPM, and then released. The brakes are released and it goes scooting down the deck, and it lifts off long before it reaches the end. That aircraft is not very heavily loaded. Here is how it looks from the cockpit of an AD-5. You see the yellow shirt there telling me to spread the wings. And he wants to move up, come up closer, closer, closer. He doesn't necessarily mean he wants you to come to him. He wants you to keep going in the direction you're pointed in. There's the turn up, and there's the release, and there the aircraft goes down the deck. Not a very light, not a very heavy load, and it lifts off long before it reaches the end. Another AD-5 being launched. And this is how it looks when you're getting ready to launch. There's aircraft ahead of me going off. And here we go down the deck. We seem to have a lot of 801s and 802s in this group. I think this was a product of film editing. As I said, we're going to get better at this as we go along. Now, this aircraft coming down is the Savage. It's AJ-1. It had 2 props and a jet in its tail. Very, very precarious aircraft to operate from a carrier. It was just too big for a small carrier, but we managed to squeeze by. They used 2 in every launch. And the pilots didn't care for that airplane too much. Here the ADs are in formation. And this is how it looks from an airplane when you're flying with other airplanes. We're flying nice and tight to make it look nice and good. That's the AD in flight. And here we're doing a little dive bombing at Sardinia, actually. We had a target down there, which is not very visible. But the aircraft is in its dive now toward the target, and when it comes down to release point, the bomber will be released, and the aircraft will then pull up and recover, which it's doing now. And here's a second dive. Actually, it's a pretty wild and fast ride going down because the aircraft is going straight down. This is an air power demonstration. These photos were taken from the ship. These particular aircraft are demonstrating the various means of delivering weapons. These were dropped horizontally, just a string of bombs from ADs. This gives you some idea how many bombs can be dropped from 2 airplanes. These are all practice bombs. These are not real wartime bombs. These are small load bombs, merely to see where they splashed and the smoke that they make. This aircraft is making a delivery which simulates he's low in the water, pulls up, releases the atomic weapon, it flips off, he goes around in a half loop, which is an Emmelman, and he starts recovering in the other direction. And there's the bomb drops. Now that would be an atomic bomb delivery by that kind of aircraft. And the idea is for him, there he goes again, low in the water, pulls up, lets the bomb go as he's in that position, continues around, and the bomb splashes about 5 miles down range. Now here are the aircraft coming back to land on the ship. That's how the aircraft carrier looks. Now that one does not have a canted deck. You can see that's just a straight deck. That's the way the Randolph looked. It had a barricade. You could not go around if you once touched down, because there was a barricade right in front of you and you were committed to a landing. There are 9 arresting wires, and you must catch one of those or get waved off a little early. Vince Stacy was a very danceable kind of LSO, as you notice. He's not what I would call a steady LSO. He changed his signals with rapidity. Those jet aircraft, here's a good example right here. He's nice and steady there. Nice and steady, that's good. Hit too high, good, that's Roger. Cut, no. There we go, that's a cut. That means cut your engine and land. The signals are quite simple. If his hands are high, you're too high. If he wants you to turn, he slants you, but he wants you to turn faster, faster. Too high, down, you're okay. Okay, cut. And there's the aircraft. Too high, turn, cut. How about that dance, huh? I see the barricade up there in front of that aircraft. There, now it drops down. And here we have a view from the tower. That's a jet aircraft coming in. Everybody's got to move very fast because that airplane has to get out of the way in a hurry. The barricade has to go back up because you see another aircraft right behind him. And this looks like an AD, which doesn't land that fast. And he's a little off center. That's one of ours. And this one here, well, this is taken from the cockpit here. This gives you an idea of how the landing looks again. And there's the landing. That's almost on the center line. You notice the long white exhaust streak? That's because that aircraft was out about 12 hours. Here's a shot from the cockpit and the landing, which is off to one side, which is not too hussy. The idea is to land right in the center of the deck. And that looks like the center line landing. That's pretty good. Here's the big one. That's the Savage, the AJ-1. That aircraft was just not made for this ship, but they put it on there anyway. And the LSO keeps notes of every landing, and he will then talk to each pilot about his approach and his landing. And there's the hot papa. He's in an asbestos suit. He's prepared to jump in the aircraft if it's on fire to rescue whoever is on fire. This is the way ships replenish each other. The aircraft carriers need fuel on a regular basis. And they also need groceries, and they also need aircraft parts. And so there's a whole fleet of supply ships that rendezvous with carriers and bring them fuel and supplies so the carriers can stay out indefinitely. When an aircraft carrier is operating, there's the fuel hose coming over. First they shoot a line over to the ship, and then they send a heavier line, and then you can see there's a pulley on one of the lines bringing the fuel hose over to connect with the carrier. But aircraft carriers, when they're operating, are only able to operate about 3 days before they need aircraft fuel, and they can usually run for a couple of weeks on black oil without getting replenished, but the aircraft use up tremendous amounts of fuel, so 3 days is about the limit